My husband, missing for 3 years, has returned with his white moonlight. Pei Xiaochu's expression was indifferent, his tone ice-cold. They all say you're my wife, but I don't remember you at all. Without any memory, it doesn't count. Back then, Ronga saved me, and she bore me children. I absolutely cannot let her down. Today, I must give her the status of equal wife. Looking at Pei Xiaochu's arrogant face, I suddenly stepped back and shouted for the guards in panic. How dare you? Where did this madman come from, daring to impersonate my husband who died on the battlefield? Guards, beat this fraud out. My husband was posthumously honored by the court as a loyal martyr. How can I allow anyone to defile his name? Since he is forgotten, then let him never remember. A dead loyal martyr husband is far more useful than a living deserter. The day Pei Xiaochu returned to the Marquis Manor, he wore plain clothes, yet couldn't hide the pride in his brows. Behind him stood a trembling woman, holding a 2- or 3-year-old boy in her arms. Crowds of onlookers surrounded them. Pei Xiaochu frowned, looking at me with disgust. Jiang Shiyu, how long are you going to keep making a scene? I've told you, I lost my memory and don't remember anything from before. But these 3 years, Ronga saved me. She has shown me kindness, so I must give her the position of equal wife. That woman called Qin Manrong had tears in her eyes and was about to kneel before me. Sister, all the mistakes are mine. Please don't blame my husband. As long as you let him come home, Ronga is willing to be a concubine, a servant, a maid, anything. What a scene of deep affection and loyalty. If I were a resentful wife, trapped in her boudoir, I'd probably be crying my heart out right now. Or for the sake of his virtuous and gentle reputation, grit my teeth and swallow this bitter pill. Too bad, I'm Jiang Shiyu. Jiang Shiyu, who managed the Marquis estate for 3 years and tripled its assets. I stood on the steps, looking down at them from above, and let out a cold laugh. Where did this lunatic come from, running to the Marquis estate's gate to put on a show? Pei Xiaochu's face darkened. Jiang Shiyu, what are you playing dumb for? I'm Pei Xiaochu. I'm your husband. Replying to Madam, the Marquis died in battle 3 years ago. Not even his bones remain. His memorial tablet is enshrined in the ancestral hall, receiving incense offerings from the entire clan, and His Majesty personally bestowed upon him the title of loyal and brave. I nodded, my gaze sharp as a blade, piercing straight at Pei Xiaochu. Did you hear that? My husband was a great hero who died long ago. You, a street scoundrel, bringing along a woman of unclear origins and a bastard child, dare to impersonate a marquis. I think you're tired of living. Pei Xiaochu clearly didn't expect this kind of reaction from me. In his impression, I should be that submissive fool who would cry tears of joy the moment he returned after serving for a couple of days. He was trembling with rage, pointing his finger at my nose. How dare you, Jiang Shiyu? I see you're trying to monopolize the Marquis Manor's fortune, although my appearance has changed somewhat. This voice, this physique, can't you recognize me? Qin Manrong chimed in from the side, crying like a pear blossom in the rain. Sister, my husband was severely injured on the battlefield and left with scars on his face, but he is really the young master. How can you be so heartless as to not even recognize your own bedside companion? The onlooking crowd began to point and whisper. After all, Pei Xiaochu's face, though somewhat darker with a few more scars, could still be recognized as 70 to 80% the same if acquaintances looked carefully. Someone whispered, he really does look like Marquis P. Yeah, could it be that Lady Pa is afraid of the mistress entering the household, so she is pretending not to recognize him? Hearing the tide turning in his favor, Pei Xiaochu's face showed a hint of smugness. He straightened his back and strode toward the gate. Move aside, I'm going to see Mother. Mother will surely recognize me. But I didn't budge an inch, only lifting my hand slightly. Over a dozen servants who had been lying in ambush behind the gate rushed out with clubs in hand, surrounding Pei Xiaochu and his 2 companions. Pei Xiaochu's steps halted, looking at me in disbelief. You dare? I looked at him contemptuously. What do you dare? My husband was a hero who stood tall between heaven and earth and died gloriously. His Majesty bestowed favor upon the Marquis Manor, not only granting gold and silver, but also conferring upon me a first-rank imperial mandate. Now the Marquis Manor is personally inscribed by the imperial brush as a house of loyal martyrs. I walked down the steps, neither too fast nor too slow, staring into Pei Xiaochu's eyes, lowering my voice to speak in a tone only the two of us could hear. Pei Xiaochu, think it through clearly. If you came back alive, that would be deceiving the emperor. If you died, that would be loyal martyrdom. What do you think? Does His Majesty hope you're alive or dead? Pei Xiaochu's pupil suddenly contracted. I straightened up and shouted loudly, "Beat them for me, beat them hard. Beat these two scoundrels who impersonate court officials and commit fraud until they leave." The servants had already received my reward money and showed no mercy in their strikes. Clubs fell like raindrops. Although Pei Xiaochu had some martial arts foundation, these 3 years in that tender haven had long since hollowed out his body, plus he had to protect that Qin Manrong and the child, so after just a few blows he was beaten into fleeing with his head covered. "Jiang Xiu, you poisonous woman, I'm going to report you to the authorities." Pei Xiaochu's earlier noble bearing vanished completely. Under the merciless blows of the clubs, he screamed miserably as the servants dragged him like a dead dog out onto the street. Qin Manrong screamed as she shielded the child, her originally exquisite hair bun now disheveled, making her look utterly wretched. I stood at the main gate, straightening my sleeves, and spoke loudly to the stunned onlookers around me. Fellow townspeople bear witness people may look alike, but I naturally recognize my own husband. Today this madman impersonates my late husband, attempting to confuse the bloodline of the Marquis Manor. I, Jiang Xiu, as the mistress of the Marquis Manor, absolutely cannot allow anyone to tarnish my late husband's reputation. From now on, if anyone dares to come and deceive again, this will be their fate. Jiang Xiu is so clear-headed. Her husband Pei Xiao became a deserter for his white moonlight, leaving her to guard an empty chamber alone and exhaust her dowry to support and revive the Marquis Manor, while he lived carefree outside for 3 years. Now he even brings his mistress demanding equal wife status. Anyone would break down, but not her. She publicly refuses to recognize him, using the heroically fallen loyal husband as a shield. This both occupies the moral high ground, protects her late husband's reputation, and gives her legitimate reason to drive away the deceitful madman, with even the onlooking townspeople on her side. That line, "From now on, if anyone dares to come and deceive, this will be their fate," isn't empty posturing. She truly means what she says. The household servants beat them with clubs, directly dragging away the scumbag and his mistress, showing not a shred of mercy. She had long seen through the scumbag's selfish callousness, so she absolutely won't look back, only guarding the glory and dignity she earned herself. Returning to the main hall, I drank a cup of tea to suppress the nausea in my heart. That was when I had just been diagnosed as pregnant. Upon hearing the news of Pei Xiao's death in battle, it upset my pregnancy, and I lost the child. Dragging my sick body, I spent all my dowry, bribing people everywhere, just wanting to recover his remains. But what was the result? My secret guards discovered him in a border town. He wasn't missing at all. Pei Xiao had saved that courtesan Qin Manrong, deserted the army, changed his name, and lived his blissful little life there with her. He used to despise me for being a rigid woman from a noble family, not understanding romance, and complained that the Marquis's household had too many rules that suffocated him. I thought it was all just angry words, but he took advantage of that war chaos, left behind a corpse wearing his clothes and even carrying his jade pendant. He himself escaped like a cicada, shedding its shell off to pursue his freedom and true love. The moment I learnt the truth, my heart died. I burned everything related to him, and calmly accepted the news of his death in battle. These 3 years, I've served my mother-in-law, managed the household, and propped up the originally declining Marquis Manor. Now I'm living comfortably with money and power, and he wants to come back and claim the fruits. Not a chance. "Madam." Someone from the old madam's side came to ask, saying she heard the commotion at the gate. My personal maid Xuntao reported carefully. I sneered. The old madam heard a commotion. No, she heard someone calling her son back to life. My mother-in-law is most greedy for money and dotes on Pei Xiaochu the most. If she knew Pei Xiaochu really came back, even if it were a corpse rising from the dead, she would still bring him in. I got up to tidy my clothes a bit. Come, let's go pay respects to mother. At Xuan Hall, the old madam was sitting on the couch, turning prayer beads in her hand, her expression not looking too good. Yeah, I heard someone was causing trouble at the gate earlier, even saying Xiaochu came back. The old madam's cloudy eyes stared at me with a hint of scrutiny. My expression didn't change as I walked behind her, massaging her shoulders, grief flashing through my eyes at just the right moment. Mother, Xiaochu is dead. We saw it with our own eyes. It is probably someone who sees our Marquis's household is now large and prosperous, trying to extort us. The old madam frowned, but I heard from the servants that person looks extremely like Xiaoshu. My hands pressed a bit harder as I slowly said, Mother, people can look alike, things can be similar, but in this world there is absolutely no such thing as coming back from the dead. Moreover, Xiaochu died serving the country, which was recognized by the emperor himself. If he didn't actually die, then the 3 years of pension money our Marquis household received would have to be returned, not to mention we'd be guilty of deceiving the emperor. At the mention of money, the old madam's body clearly stiffened. These 3 years, relying on the court's rewards and my management, her life has been much more comfortable than before. Bird's nest soup at every meal, new clothes every season. If Pei Xiaochu came back, all of this would go down the drain. Moreover, faking one's death to desert would result in the execution of 9 generations of kin. That swindler even brought a woman who looked like she was from a brothel and a child, claiming they were the mistress Xiaochu set up outside. Mother, you know what a filial child Xiaochu was. If he were truly alive, how could he possibly not send word home for 3 years? That swindler must have heard some gossip from somewhere and come to ruin Xiaochu's reputation. The old madam's hand stopped turning the prayer beads. Though my mother-in-law dotes on her son, she loves herself more and loves money even more. Besides, she must know in her heart that with Pei Xiaochu's character, if he were really doing well outside, he definitely wouldn't think of his mother coming back in such a sorry state now. He must have spent all his money. The old madam's body stiffened, and she pretended to wipe away tears. My son was a hero who died such a tragic death. I miss him dearly too. Forget it, you handle those people. The corner of my mouth curved slightly. Mother is wise, we can't let those petty scoundrels come harass us again. This daughter-in-law thinks we should hold another Buddhist ceremony for Xiaochu to announce to the world that the Marquis Manor will not tolerate being bullied. The old madam nodded. Just as I left Xuan Hall, the steward came rushing over. Madam, that madman has beaten the drum at the prefectural office to lodge a complaint. He claims to be Pei Xiaochu, and is accusing you, madam, of murdering your husband and seizing the family property. I paused in my steps, a flash of coldness passing through my eyes. Prepare the carriage, we're going to the government office. Beating the drum to appeal for justice. I'd like to see how many lives he has to play this game with me outside the main hall of the government office. There was a sea of people. Pei Xiaochu knelt in the hall below, his forehead wrapped in gauze. Qin Manrong knelt to the side holding the child, crying so miserably. The magistrate sat in the high hall looking troubled. I walked slowly into the court in formal attire, but didn't kneel. I am a first-rank imperial consort personally conferred by the emperor. His Majesty has exempted me from the kneeling ceremony. When Pei Xiaochu saw me, the hatred in his eyes was about to overflow. Your Honor, it is this venomous woman. She clearly recognized me, yet still ordered her servants to attack. She just wants to monopolize the family fortune. She wants me dead. The magistrate coughed. Lady Pei, is this true? I glanced at Pei Xiaochu indifferently. Your Honor, this scam has many layers. Since this person came prepared, he naturally inquired about some information. Pei Xiaochu roared. Jiang Shiyu, on our wedding night, I promised you a lifetime with just the 2 of us. Have you forgotten that too? I looked at him in shock, the corner of my mouth curling into a sneer. Back then, my husband and I had a deep affection for each other. How many servants in the household knew about this matter? Besides, isn't what you're saying ridiculous? My husband promised me we'd be just the 2 of us, yet you brought back a woman. How am I supposed to trust you? Pei Xiaochu was left speechless, his face flushing red. Wronger has done me a great kindness. I'm repaying her. Repaying kindness means pledging yourself to her. Repaying kindness means having children together. Repaying kindness means abandoning your elderly mother and lawful wife at home to live freely and happily outside for 3 years. My words were like pearls, forcing Pei Xiaochu to retreat step by step. You claim to be Pei Xiaochu, who would believe that? Pei Xiaochu said anxiously, I have a red birthmark on the inner side of my thigh. The crowd stirred again with commotion. To bring up such private matters, it seemed he really was who he claimed to be. Qin Manrong also took the opportunity to cry out, Elder sister, the mark on my husband's body can't be fake. The magistrate also looked toward me, seemingly waiting for my explanation, but I wasn't flustered in the slightest. Instead, I sighed and looked at Pei Xiaochu with a face full of pity. My good sir, to impersonate my late husband, you really have put in quite the effort. What a pity you calculated everything, but missed one thing. I turned to face the magistrate and declared loudly, Your Honor, before my late husband went off to war 3 years ago, he was injured in a fall from his horse. A chunk of flesh was torn from the inner side of his thigh, leaving a large scar. How could there still be any birthmark there? Pei Xiaochu froze. In these 3 years, he only cared about romantic pleasures. How could he remember what injuries he had before going to the expedition? In fact, that fall from the horse was just a ploy he used to avoid the expedition drill. He didn't injure his thigh at all, just scraped a bit of skin. But since I dare to say it, naturally I came prepared. The one who treated my late husband at that time was Imperial Physician Lai from the Imperial Medical Bureau. If Your Honor doesn't believe me, you can summon Imperial Physician Lai to question him. Pei Xiaochu panicked. You're talking nonsense. I never had that kind of injury. I sneered. See, he doesn't even know whether he was injured or not, yet dares to claim he is Pei Xiaochu. Imperial Physician Lai has records on file at the Imperial Medical Bureau. In truth, I had already tampered with those medical records at the Imperial Medical Bureau. These 3 years, the silver I used to pave the way wasn't spent for nothing. Pei Xiaochu looked at my confident eyes and began to feel uncertain. He probably also remembered that in these 3 years he never wrote a single letter home. Now that he has suddenly returned, whatever I say goes. He gritted his teeth. Jiang Shiyu, you're really ruthless. There is no birthmark, but this face can't be fake, right? Even if there are scars. These facial features and contours, are they fake too? Besides, I can do the blood recognition test. This child is my flesh and blood. As long as my blood and the child's blood merge, it will prove I'm Pei Xiaochu. This idiot actually thought of using the blood recognition test, such a lousy trick. Not to mention that blood recognition is unreliable to begin with. Even if it were reliable, I can make it unreliable, but I have no intention of getting entangled with him in this world. What I want is to make him completely disgraced and ruined, with no chance of ever recovering. This child being your seed can only prove you're the child's father. How can it prove you're Pei Xiaochu? What if you were originally a vagrant who fathered this bastard and came here to scam us? Pei Xiaochu was so angry his eyes nearly popped out at him. Then I'll do a blood recognition with Mother. Whether I'm a Pei family seed or not, one test will tell. I raised an eyebrow. You want to see Mother? Yes, I want to see Mother. Mother loves me most. She would never be as vicious as you. I nodded and turned to the magistrate. Your Honor, since this person won't shed tears until he sees the coffin, please have the old madam come to the court. Pei Xiaochu was overjoyed beyond expectation, but I was even more excited than him. The old madam was soon brought to the court. When Pei Xiaochu saw his mother, tears instantly came down. Mother, your son has returned. Your son isn't dead. The old madam looked at the man kneeling on the ground with a face full of stubble, a trace of complex emotion flashing in her eyes. She instinctively shrank back, avoiding Pei Xiaochu's hand and also avoiding his pleading gaze. Pei Xiaochu froze. Mother, don't you recognize me? I'm Xiaochu. Look, this is the scar from when your son was naughty as a child and fell from climbing a tree. He pointed at an old scar on his temple, desperately trying to prove himself. The old lady's hands were trembling. That was the son she had carried for 10 months and given birth to. She would recognize him even if he turned to ash. I glanced at her lightly and silently mouthed the words, loyal martyr. The current glory and wealth of the Marquise's household all depended on the loyal martyr. If she acknowledged him as her son, not only would she have to return the silver the court had given over these 3 years, but she would also face the crime of deceiving the emperor. More importantly, this son had come back and brought with him a mistress and child. This cash cow would likewise not let it rest. The old lady looked toward me. I stood to the side with an indifferent expression, merely adjusting the priceless top-grade jade button on my sleeve. That was from a few months ago when I had specially sought it from the south to show my filial respect to her. Over these 3 years, I had let her grow accustomed to an extravagant lifestyle, precisely to prevent something like today. It is easy to go from frugality to luxury, but hard to go from luxury to frugality. The old lady closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, the loving kindness in her eyes had completely vanished, leaving only cold determination. She raised her cane and struck it hard on the ground, pointing at Pei Xiaochu and scolding angrily. Where did this scoundrel come from, daring to impersonate my son? Pei Xiaochu's entire body froze in place, his mouth agape, unable to make a sound for a long time. The old lady turned her head, looked again, and cupped her hands toward the magistrate. Your Honor, this old woman is advanced in years, but my eyes are not yet blind. My son Xiaoshu died in battle 3 years ago, and I personally selected the coffin to bury his remains. Although this person bears some resemblance to my son, his demeanor is wretched, and his behavior vulgar. He is absolutely not a son of our Marquis household. Mother, I am Xiaochu. I am your most beloved Xiaochu. Pei Xiaochu broke down crying, trying to grab and pull at her. But the old lady retreated in disgust and said sternly, Silence. My son was an upstanding hero, how could you? A lowly rat compare. You keep claiming to be my son. So where have you been these 3 years? Why didn't you come home? Why wait until now to return with a bastard child to claim the family fortune? Your Honor, this is simply preposterous. Pei Xiaochu was completely dumbfounded. Qin Manrong was also scared stiff, curling up into a ball while holding the child. Suddenly, Pei Xiaochu turned to look at me, his eyes filled with venomous hatred. It is you, Jiang Shuyu. It must be you who fed Mother some kind of poison. It is you who forced Mother to say this, isn't it? I watched coldly as he lashed out like a mad dog. Pei Xiaochu, even now you still don't know repentance. I walked in front of him, lowered my voice, and spoke in a voice only he could hear. You being alive is a disaster for the Marquis Manor. Only your death is the Marquis Manor's glory. Since you abandoned us for a woman, then please die thoroughly. After speaking, I straightened up and bowed to the magistrate. Your Honor, this person is impersonating a court official and disrupting the court. Please punish him severely according to the law. The magistrate slammed the gavel. Audacious scoundrel. With both witness and evidence present, even old Madame Gu says you're a fake. What more do you have to say? Guards drag him out, 50 heavy strikes with the rod, parade him through the streets, and expel him to the capital. Pei Xiaochu was pressed to the ground by the bailiffs, and the rod fell heavily. Screams of agony echoed through the court. The old madam trembled as she turned around, not daring to look at that bloody scene. I supported her arm and said gently, Mother, don't be afraid. Your daughter-in-law is here. Let's go home. Walking to the government office gate, the sunlight was blinding. Behind us were Pei Xiaochu's desperate howls and the people's curses. Yet my mood was incredibly pleasant. In the carriage on the way back to the manor, the old madam kept trembling. She clutched the prayer beads tightly in her hand, muttering under her breath. I don't know if she was praying to Buddha for protection or repenting. She suddenly grabbed my hand, her voice hoarse, her eyes red. Am I being too cruel? That is flesh that fell from my own body after all. I glanced at the excellent quality, full green jade bracelet on her wrist, grasped her hand in return. My tone gentle. Mother, this concerns the ancestors of the Pei family and the lives of hundreds of people in our Marquis Manor. Xiaoshu has been filial since childhood and naturally understands your painstaking efforts. Think about it. If the news of Xiaochu returning alive is confirmed, that would be the crime of deceiving the emperor. at that time, forget about this bracelet and carriage. Even the main gate of our Marquis Manor would be sealed. At your age, would you want to kneel at the execution ground to receive punishment? The old madam shuddered violently, and that trace of reluctance in her eyes instantly vanished into thin air. She took a deep breath, as if hypnotizing herself. My son Xiaochu is a hero, a great hero who died on the battlefield long ago. I smiled with satisfaction and retrieved a box of freshly made bird's nest pastries from the hidden compartment. Mother has been frightened by the Marquis Manor incident. These are made from a recipe that came from the Imperial kitchen. Please try some to calm your nerves. The old madam took the pastries and wolfed down 2 bites. She loves money and cherishes her life. As long as I don't fall, the Marquis Manor's wealth and glory remain, and she will forever be the high and mighty old lady of nobility. Upon returning to the manor, I immediately ordered the steward to send people to watch Pei Xiaochu, especially places like the ruined temple outside the city, and beggars' dens report any movements immediately. The steward accepted the order and left. I sat in the grand armchair, picked up the teacup, and gently skimmed off the floating foam. At this time, Pei Xiao was probably still enduring those 50 punitive strikes, his skin split and flesh torn. Those heartless people were most likely at the scene too. I really want to see just how much this so-called true love is worth in the face of hunger and pain. 3 days later, the steward said he'd found them. Those 2 didn't go far. They're in a dilapidated earth god temple on the west side of the city. The man is badly injured, running a high fever, can't walk, and the woman pawned all her jewelry to buy a few medicinal plasters. She is crying while brewing the medicine. The ruined temple on the west side, that is where beggars and vagrants gather, reeking to high heaven. I put down the account book in my hand, a faint smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. As a first-rank lady with an imperial mandate, our Marquis household has always been charitable. Now that there are many refugees outside the city, I'll go take a look. It'll be a good deed for my late husband too. As soon as the Marquis household's porridge tent was set up, a long line immediately formed, dressed in plain white brocade with a moon-white cloak draped over. I stood before the porridge tent like a living bodhisattva who saves people from suffering. Lady Pei is such a kind soul. Marquis Pei's spirit in heaven will surely bless you, madam. I smiled gently, signalling the maids to distribute the steamed buns and hot porridge, but my gaze passed through the crowd, landing on that dark corner in the distance. Pei Xiaochu lay sprawled on a pile of rotten straw, his whole body filthy and reeking. Those 50 lashes had left his flesh torn open, and the wounds, having received no proper treatment, had already begun to fester. He was burning up with fever, his face flushed red, mumbling incoherently. Qin Manrong sat to one side, her once fair face now covered in grime, her silk and satin garments long since reduced to tattered rags. She held a broken bowl in her hands, staring longingly at the porridge stall over there. The child was crying loudly from hunger. Voice hoarse. "Wronger water," Pei Xiaochu called out weakly. Qin Manrong acted as if she hadn't heard, staring fixedly at that steaming hot mantou. She hesitated for a long while, but finally couldn't resist her hunger. She plopped the child down next to Pei Xiaochu and got up to squeeze her way toward the porridge stall. The Qin Manrong, who used to act all delicate in front of Pei Xiaochu, who couldn't even walk steadily now for a bite to eat, she was shoving desperately among the beggars. "Give me one." She reached out her hand, hair dishevelled, fingernails caked with black dirt. Shontao was in charge of distributing the porridge and recognized her at a glance. "Well, well, isn't this the concubine Qin who tried to kill herself at the Marquis Manor's gates?" Shuntao's voice was shrill, deliberately shouting loud enough for everyone around to hear. "What is this? Marquis Pai didn't take you to eat and drink well, so now you're coming to beg from us." Qin Manrong was so ashamed and angry she could die, her face flushing the colour of pig liver. The beggars around burst into laughter. "So this is the mistress of that fraud who impersonated the Marquis. She has got some looks. Why would she be with a fraud?" But hunger conquered her shame, and she gritted her teeth, saying, "I'm here to get porridge. Didn't your Marquis's household say all beings are equal?" I walked over slowly and stood before her. Even from 2 steps away, I could smell that sour stench coming from her body. I said coolly, all beings are indeed equal, but in my book, frauds are the exception. Chin Manrong suddenly looked up at me, her eyes full of jealous hatred. Jiang Shiyu, don't go too far. Xiao is running a high fever right now. If anything happens to him, you'll be a murderer. Murderer. I covered my nose and mouth with a handkerchief in disgust. Listen here, old woman. You can eat carelessly, but you can't talk carelessly. My husband is enshrined in the ancestral hall. As for that one over there, he is just a fraud who hasn't died yet. Having said that, I pulled out a silver ingot from my sleeve. A full 10 taels, gleaming with a tempting luster in the sunlight. Chin Manrong's eyes immediately went straight. I tossed the silver in my hand, casually saying, I never give money to swindlers for charity, but I've always been soft-hearted. Here is 10 taels of silver. Enough for you to find a doctor, have a full meal, and even hire a cart to leave the capital. Chin Manrong instinctively reached out to grab it. I pulled my hand back, smiling meaningfully. However, I have one condition. Chin Manrong swallowed hard, staring fixedly at the silver. What condition? I pointed at Pei Xiaochu lying in the pile of rotten straw, then pointed at the wailing child beside her, my voice full of temptation. This silver can only save one person. You can take it to treat him, being a woman of loyalty and righteousness. Or you can take the silver and leave with the child. 10 taels, if spent carefully, is enough to buy 2 mu of land in the countryside and raise the child. Chin Manrong froze, then turned to glance at Pei Xiaochu. This man who once promised her wealth and glory, for whom she abandoned everything, now lay there paralyzed. All dignity lost after a long moment. Chin Manrong's eyes began to flicker. Pei Xiaochu seemed to sense something, forcing his eyes open with all his strength, hoarsely shouting, Wronger, don't believe that venomous woman's manipulation. Take me away. I'm a man. I'll compensate you and the child later. I looked at him in surprise. Pei Xiaochu, you can't even crawl now. What are you going to compensate with? With that mouth of yours that only knows how to deceive people. I pushed the silver toward Chin Manrong again, saying gently, Have you thought it through? If you miss this village, there won't be this shop. Chin Manrong tremblingly reached out her hand. Under Pei Xiaochu's disbelieving gaze, she snatched the silver ingot and clutched it tightly in her palm, gripping it so hard her knuckles turned white. Pei Xiaochu's eyes were about to split with rage. He struggled to get up, but it pulled at his wound, causing him to scream in pain and fall back down. Chin Manrong didn't dare look at him. She just held the child tightly and kowtowed to me. Then she got up, picked up the child and ran in the opposite direction without looking back. She didn't even glance at Pei Xiaochu once. Wronger, Chin Manrong, you bitch, come back here. Pei Xiaochu roared in despair, his hands clawing at the mud on the ground, his nails breaking off, blood dripping everywhere. I walked to Pei Xiaochu and looked down at him from above. He lay on the ground, his face covered in tears and mud, his eyes hollow, as if his soul had been extracted. How does it feel, Pei Xiaochu? Does your heart ache? My voice was soft, yet it stabbed into his heart like a knife. Back then, when I heard the news of you eloping with her, it hurt even more than this. Pei Xiaochu slowly raised his head, his eyes full of bloodshot veins, gnashing his teeth. Are you satisfied now? You forced Wronger away, ruined me completely. I'll haunt you even as a ghost. I sneered. Don't pin everything on me. I just gave her a choice. If she truly loved you with her life, she could have thrown the silver in my face or taken it to buy you medicine. What a pity. She chose the money, chose herself. Seems like your true love wasn't much after all. Pei Xiaochu's body trembled violently, and he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. During these 3 years of fleeing and hiding, he must have sensed Chin Manrong's vanity and complaints. He just refused to admit it. Admitting it would mean admitting his 3 years of devotion were a complete mistake, admitting he was a complete fool who abandoned pearls to pick up fish eyes. Now I've completely torn away that fig leaf, dripping with blood, pain piercing to the heart. I crouched down, looking at his wretched face, and said in a low voice, Actually, I should thank her. If she hadn't taken you away, how could I have gained sole control and lived such a carefree life as I do now? Pei Xiaochu, to repay you, I'll have someone leave you with a breath of life. After all, letting you die just like that would be too easy on you. I stood up, patting the dust on my skirt. Butler, leave 2 steamed buns for this beggar. Don't let people say our Marquis manor lacks kindness. As for whether you can survive or not, that depends on your own fortune. I turned and left. Behind me came Pei Xiaochu's desperate howls like a wild beast. Qin Manrong ran off with the silver, and Pei Xiaochu became completely alone. But he was tough. He didn't die. Perhaps it was hatred supporting him, or perhaps he still fantasized about making a comeback one day. He scraped by living in the beggar's den, surviving on begging and picking up leftover food. And I continued being my glorious Marquis manor lady, but I knew if you don't pull up the roots when cutting grass, it will grow again with the spring breeze. Especially someone like Pei Xiaochu, if you don't completely break his spine, he'll always be thinking about biting people. Half a month later, news came from Wanhua Building. It was said that there was a newly arrived courtesan who came with a child, not only looked pitiful and delicate, but her singing was exceptional, attracting countless patrons vying for her attention. That courtesan's name was Qin Yue, but I knew that was Qin Manrong. 10 taels of silver, in a place like the capital, couldn't last more than a few days. She couldn't endure hardship and had a child with her, so returning to her old trade was only a matter of time. I deliberately had someone accidentally leak this news to Pei Xiaochu in his beggar's den. That day, Pei Xiaochu went crazy, dragging that already ruined leg of his. He crawled step by step with great effort to the back door of Wanhua Pavilion. As luck would have it, that day Qin Manrong was accompanying a wealthy merchant coming through the back door, preparing to go boating on the lake. She was dressed up gorgeously, her face caked with thick powder, her smile dripping with seductive charm. The child had been left with the madam to look after, not at her side at all. Wronger. Pei Xiaochu rushed out from the shadows and grabbed the hem of Qin Manrong's skirt. Qin Manrong screamed in fright, but when she saw clearly that the man who looked like an evil ghost was Pei Xiaochu, the terror in her eyes instantly turned to disgust. Where did this stinking beggar come from? Get lost. Don't dirty my dress. She kicked Pei Xiaochu right in the chest. Pei Xiaochu was kicked to the ground, looking at her in disbelief. Wronger, it is me, I'm Xiaochu. Qin Manrong sneered coldly. Now that she had a wealthy merchant backing her, she was full of confidence. Pei Xiaochu is long dead. You're nothing but a wanted criminal, a feiwu. Do you know how much I suffered following you these 3 years? I was the top courtesan at Wanhua House. If I hadn't left with you, I would have already saved enough money to buy my freedom and become a proper wife. You ruined me. Qin Manrong got angrier as she spoke, grabbing the round fan in her hand and smacking it at Pei Xiaocheng's head. What are you coming to find me for now? Want me to support you? Dream on. The rich merchant beside her covered his nose and said impatiently, Ruyan, who is this? He stinks so bad. Qin Manrong immediately switched to a coquettish smile and hooked her arm around the rich merchants. The two chatted and laughed as they got into the carriage and drove off. Only Pei Xiaocheng was left lying alone in the muddy water, watching the direction the carriage departed, letting out heart-wrenching maniacal laughter. Laughing and laughing, he started to cry. Just then, a pair of delicate embroidered shoes stopped in front of him. I held up an oil paper umbrella, blocking the blazing sun above his head. Pei Xiaocheng, you look just like a dog. Pei Xiaocheng jerked his head up, looking at me in my fresh and pristine state, then looked at himself covered in filthy mud. In this moment, his self-esteem completely collapsed. Pei Xiaocheng kowtowed non-stop, his forehead striking against the bluestone slabs with resounding thuds. Zhang Shiyu, kill me, please kill me. I smiled slightly, pulled out a dagger from my sleeve, and tossed it in front of him. Want to die? Easy. Ye Guo, if you just die like this, Qin Manrong will take your blood money and live it up in the brothel. In the future, she'll even take that bastard child and claim it is your flesh and blood to swindle others' money. Are you willing to accept that? Pei Xiaochu looked at the dagger on the ground, the death ash in his eyes reignited, transforming into a raging fire of hatred. He was not willing. He hated Chin Manrong 10,000 times more than he hated me. I turned around, leaving behind a casual remark. I heard that tonight Chin Manrong is accompanying that Master Wang to spend the night on his boat. Master Wang loves to play with thrills. The guards on the boat aren't that tight. Who knows, with your skills and everyone believing you're Pei Xiaochu, right? Behind me, Pei Xiaochu's hand trembled as he slowly gripped that dagger of his. That night, the banks of the Qinhuai River were brightly lit with lanterns, filled with music and dancing. I rented an entire pleasure boat, not far from Master Wang's boat, leisurely sipping pre-rain Longjing tea. Chontao was somewhat nervous, occasionally glancing out the window. Madam, does he really dare to make a move? I blew on the tea leaves, my expression calm. When a person has even their last bit of dignity trampled to pieces, they are no longer human, but a ghost. When vengeful ghosts claim lives, what is there to not dare? As soon as the words left my mouth, a piercing scream suddenly came from the flower boat in the distance. Right after that came the loud crash of tables and chairs toppling over and porcelain shattering, along with a woman's terrified screams. Murder, murder, someone come quick. There is a crazy beggar killing people. The river surface immediately descended into chaos. I put down my teacup, walked to the window, and through the shimmering waves of light, watched the chaos on the other side. Through the swaying lamplight, I vaguely saw a blood-soaked figure straddling a woman, the dagger in their hand falling again and again. Master Wang's guards finally snapped to attention and swarmed over, their clubs raining down on that person like hailstones. But he seemed to feel no pain at all, even as he was beaten, until his bones broke and tendons snapped. Blood spilling from his mouth, that hand still clutched the dagger in a death grip. Only when his last breath left him did he collapse limply onto that woman's mangled, bloody body. It was Pei Xiaochu and Chin Manrong in life. He said he wanted to spend his whole life with her alone, and even be buried in the same grave after death. Now, he got his wish. Early the next morning, the capital exploded with the news, with every street and alley discussing last night's tragedy. They said that Qin Yue, the newly promoted courtesan of Wanhua House, was accompanying a client when a crazy beggar burst in. The beggar didn't even ask for money, he just started stabbing people, every strike fatal. In the end, both died. They say when that beggar died, his eyes were still wide open, refusing to close no matter what. Officials came to examine the corpse, but couldn't find out the beggar's identity, because his face had long been beaten to a pulp, and there were no personal items to identify him. The magistrate wanted to close the case quickly, so he ruled it as a vagrant going mad and committing murder. But I, as a warm-hearted lady with an imperial title, still went to the morgue. The morgue was cold and damp. 2 corpses lay side by side, covered with white cloth. I had the coroner lift a corner of the white cloth. Pei Xiao's face, once handsome but now completely disfigured, was revealed. He died miserably, not a single bone in his body intact, but my heart didn't waver in the slightest. Madam, do you know this beggar? The coroner asked cautiously. I took out a handkerchief to cover my nose and mouth, shaking my head with disgust. I don't know him. I only heard that this beggar caused trouble at the gate of my Marquis estate before committing the crime, so I came to take a look. As for this woman, she is also a pitiful person. If no one claims the body, throw her to the mass grave too. Enemies in life, neighbours in death, that is also a kind of fate. After Chin Manrong died, the child was considered unlucky by the madam, who was planning to sell him to human traffickers. Although that was Pi Xiao's seed, the child is innocent. I'm not heartless enough to kill a 3-year-old child, but I'm even less willing to play the saint and bring him back to the Marquis Manor to raise a future threat. I had the steward spend a few taels of silver to buy the child from the madam. Then I sent people to take him to an orphanage 1,000 miles away. That is a remote small town in the south, with clear mountains and beautiful waters, but separated from the capital by countless mountains and rivers. I gave the orphanage a sum of money, enough for this child to grow up safely, learn a trade, and become an ordinary farmer or craftsman. He won't know his own identity, nor will he know how his parents died miserably. He will live as an ordinary person, spending his life plainly, and simply this is also the last bit of mercy I'm leaving for the Pai family. I took a deep breath. From now on, there will be no more Pai family heir in this world, and no Qin concubine either. Only that loyal martyr Pei Shao who died in battle, enshrined in the Marquis Manor's ancestral hall, will live forever in people's admiration, and I will carry this honor and the Marquis Manor's wealth, living out my life as a wealthy idle person. Back at the manor, I went to Xuan Hall. The old madam has been ill these past 2 days. I heard it was from fright, after hearing the news about the mad beggar killing people that day. She fell ill and couldn't get up, having nightmares all night. I held the medicine bowl, sat by the bedside, and gently blew on the medicine in the spoon to cool it. "Mother, drink the medicine." The old lady opened her eyes, saw it was me, and a flash of fear passed through her eyes. She tremblingly opened her mouth. "Shochu, has he really left?" I fed her a sip of medicine, my movements extremely gentle. "What nonsense is mother saying? Xiaochu left 3 years ago. The one who died last night was just a mad beggar." The old lady stared into my eyes. After a long while, she finally lowered her eyelids dejectedly. I was mistaken. She obediently opened her mouth to drink the medicine, not daring to spill a single drop. I smiled with satisfaction and tucked in the corners of her quilt. "Mother, just focus on recovering and living out your years in peace. As long as you're well, the Marquis Manor will be well, and our wealth and glory will last forever." The old lady nodded repeatedly. "I'll listen to everything you say from now on. This family is entirely under your control." From then on, the old lady completely handed over the household management authority, staying in Xuan Hall, eating vegetarian food and chanting Buddhist scriptures, never interfering with the manor's affairs again. I was also happy to have this leisure. A year later, the imperial court awarded merits, and in remembrance of Marquis's loyalty and valor, bestowed another title upon the Marquis Manor. I became the most noble woman in the capital. When I had nothing to do, I would sit in the garden pavilion, looking at the garden full of spring colors, drinking a pot of good tea. Occasionally, when someone mentioned that mad beggar who caused a disturbance at the Marquis Manor's gate back then, they would only tell it as a joke. I closed my eyes, enjoying this tranquility that belongs solely to the victor. As for Pei Xiaochu, since I've forgotten him, then never remember him again. Let that ridiculous vow rot in the dirt along with him. What stabs deepest is this resolute, complete letting go. Not teeth-gnashing hatred, not unforgettable resentment, but truly burying Pei Xiaochu along with his ridiculous vow into the dirt. He was once the husband she searched for by spending her entire dowry, the good man she awaited with her whole heart. But after the betrayal happened, she personally transformed the living deserter into a dead loyal martyr, and transformed herself from a resentful wife into the person in power of the Marquis's household. No, she has a garden full of spring scenery as company, wealth and glory upon her person. Those people and events that hurt her have long become insignificant gossip material. This attitude of "you are not even worthy of being my enemy in my heart, you only deserve to be a joke," has more power than any intense revenge. A woman's strength has never been about putting the other party to death, but living her own life, thriving and flourishing, making the scumbag disappear forever from her world.